My name is Olivia Taylor, and the last time I saw Grant Parker, he was laughing at me across the boardroom table. The same room we had once built our dreams in. He leaned back in his leather chair, eyes glinting with arrogance, and said, "You'll never make it without me, Liv. You're too emotional for business. That's why I win and you don't." The room went quiet. Even the sound of the air conditioner felt louder than my heartbeat. I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but all I could do was stare at the man I had once trusted with everything. My career, my heart, my future. 6 months earlier, we were unstoppable, the power couple of the startup world. We had built a promising tech firm from scratch, working out of coffee shops and sleepless nights. But as the company grew, so did his ego. The man who once held my hand through every struggle started seeing me as a threat. It began with small remarks. "Maybe let me handle this pitch," or "investors prefer hearing from me." Then came the betrayal, not just in business but in love. The night before a crucial investor meeting, I found out he had been seeing our marketing director behind my back. And worse, he used that chaos to force me out of the company I helped build. He made me sign away my shares, saying it was for the best. I was too broken to fight back. But as I walked out of that glass tower with nothing but a box of files and a heart full of fury, I made myself a promise. "You'll regret underestimating me, Grant. You'll remember my name when it's written above yours." I didn't know how or when, but that promise became the fire that changed everything. The first night after walking out of Grant's company, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by files, unpaid bills, and tears I refused to let fall. The city lights outside my window blurred as I replayed every moment of betrayal. Every time he called me too emotional, every meeting he took credit for. My name had been erased from our company website within 24 hours, as if I never existed. I had two options: start over or stay broken. And I wasn't about to let him win twice. The next morning, I opened my old laptop. Cracked screen, slow processor, but mine. I made a list on a yellow notepad. Clients. Investors. Contact. Ideas. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. I registered my new company name, Lux Edge Strategies. It sounded bold, expensive. The kind of name that would make people look twice before asking who ran it. The first few weeks were brutal. My calls went unanswered. My emails ignored. People whispered that I was the girl who got kicked out of her own startup. I took freelance consulting gigs that barely paid rent, worked until 3 a.m., and lived off instant coffee and pure stubbornness. One night, I caught my reflection in the laptop screen. Tired eyes, messy bun, a spark of defiance. "You can't quit now," I whispered. He's still laughing. I didn't know it then, but that stubborn whisper would become my driving force. The reason I'd one day walk into a boardroom and make the entire world remember my name. 3 months passed, and I was still living paycheck to paycheck, consulting small firms, skipping dinners, pretending I was fine. Some nights, I'd scroll through Grant's LinkedIn posts, polished interviews, motivational quotes, photos with investors who used to praise our partnership. I hated that part of me still cared, but that sting of jealousy became fuel. Then one cold Tuesday morning, everything changed. My phone buzzed with an email titled "Potential Collaboration, Shaw Enterprises." I froze. Eleanor Shaw was a name every businesswoman in New York knew. A retired executive who built an empire from scratch before most people believed women could lead. I assumed it was spam until I opened it. "Ms. Taylor, I read an article about your previous company and what followed. I like your resilience. Meet me at Café Verona, 3 p.m. tomorrow." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Someone had finally noticed me. Not for the scandal, but for surviving it. When we met, Eleanor was exactly as I'd imagined. Sharp eyes, silver hair, and the calm authority of someone who'd fought 1,000 battles and won most of them. She listened as I told her my story, then leaned forward and said softly, "You've got something they can't teach, fire. Let's build from that." That meeting didn't just give me advice, it gave me a lifeline. Within weeks, she introduced me to her old contacts and helped me land my first real contract, a small luxury brand desperate for a marketing turnaround. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent and reignited my confidence. For the first time since losing everything, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the comeback had begun. The project Eleanor helped me land wasn't glamorous, a struggling boutique brand with fading sales and an outdated image. But to me, it was everything. My first real shot to prove that I could stand on my own. When I walked into their small downtown office for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: purpose. The owner, a kind woman named Renee, looked at me with cautious hope. "We can't afford big agencies," she said, "but we heard you're different." Different. The same word Grant used like an insult. Only this time, it felt like a compliment. For weeks, I lived and breathed that project. I rewrote their marketing strategy, designed campaigns myself, and built social media ads from scratch. I even handwrote thank you cards to every loyal customer, just to remind them the brand still cared. I didn't have a team, just a dream and a 10-year-old laptop that overheated every 2 hours. One night, Eleanor called. "You sound tired," she said. "Tired," I laughed. "But alive." "Good," she replied. "You're rebuilding something real. Keep going. They'll notice soon." And she was right. Within 2 months, Renee's boutique saw a 200% increase in online sales. Fashion blogs started calling her the comeback queen. And quietly, she made sure everyone knew who was behind the campaign. That's how it started. One small success that began echoing through the right circles. And somewhere in those circles, I knew Grant would eventually hear my name again. By the 3rd month, LuxEdge Strategies was no longer just a name on a business card. It was beginning to mean something. Small brands were reaching out through referrals, and I finally hired a part-time assistant, Nina, who reminded me a little of myself years ago. Ambitious, nervous, and hungry to learn. But success in business always travels faster than you expect. Especially in circles that once shut you out. One afternoon, while preparing a presentation for a new client, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Impressive comeback, Olivia. Didn't think you'd last a month without me." My stomach tightened. Grant. I stared at the screen for a long time, then calmly deleted the message. He wasn't going to get the satisfaction of a reply. Later that evening, Eleanor called again. "You've made noise in the right places," she said. "But be careful, your success threatens someone who thought you'd never rise again." She was right. 2 days later, a rumor began circulating that my company was copying strategies from Grant's firm. It was a lie, clearly planted, but it worked. A few potential clients backed out. I spent nights drafting damage control emails, sick with frustration. Just when I thought everything might collapse again, I got a call that changed everything. A major luxury hotel chain wanted to meet. "We've seen your boutique work," the CEO said. "We want that same magic, but on a global scale." I hung up, shaking. It was the opportunity that could transform LuxEdge from a survival story into an empire. And I made myself a quiet promise that night. I wouldn't just fight back. Ive dominata. The meeting with the luxury hotel chain was held in their Manhattan penthouse suite. Glass walls, skyline views, and a boardroom filled with people who looked like they'd stepped straight out of Forbes. My heart pounded as I adjusted my blazer and walked in, laptop under my arm, pretending confidence I didn't entirely feel. The CEO, Michael Langford, gestured for me to begin. "We've reviewed your campaigns for Betrayal," he said. "You turned a failing boutique into a social media phenomenon. We want that energy for our global rebrand." As I presented my pitch, I could see nods around the table. Every late night, every tear, every insult Grant had ever thrown at me. It all built up to this. By the end of the meeting, Langford stood, smiled, and extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Taylor. You've just secured a multi-million-dollar contract." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I managed to shake his hand, keeping my voice steady, but inside I was screaming with relief and pride. That evening, I called Eleanor. "Told you," she said. "The right doors open when you stop knocking on the wrong ones." But success rarely comes without shadows. 2 weeks later, as we finalized the marketing rollout, I received a legal notice. Grant's firm had filed a complaint, accusing LuxEdge Strategies of intellectual property infringement. It was pure intimidation, designed to delay my project and scare off the client. I spent a sleepless night reviewing documents and assembling proof that every concept was mine. When I showed up at the next meeting, the hotel's legal advisor handed me a copy of Grant's claim and asked for my side. I laid out the evidence, every timestamp, every original draft, clear, meticulous, unshakable. By the end of that week, the complaint was dismissed. Grant had overplayed his hand. And for the first time, the industry began whispering, not about his firm but about mine. The Aurora Grande campaign launched with precision. My team worked around the clock, cinematic ads, influencer partnerships, and digital storytelling that made luxury feel personal again. Within a week, the brand's online engagement tripled. Within a month, they were trending globally. Every major business magazine ran a headline. Unknown startup revives hotel empire. Meet the woman behind LuxEdge strategies. My inbox flooded. Investors, clients, job offers, interviews. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the woman Grant once said would never make it. But fame has a way of bringing ghosts back to life. One afternoon, I arrived at a networking gala celebrating women in business. As I moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging smiles, a familiar voice froze me mid-step. Olivia Taylor. I'll be damned. Grant. Standing at the bar, whiskey in hand, wearing the same smug confidence I once mistook for charm. He looked me up and down. You clean up well, he said. Guess my little assistant grew up. I smiled politely, every ounce of my composure hiding the storm beneath. You always underestimated assistants, Grant. That's why you're standing there, and I'm standing here. For a moment, silence. Then his smirk faltered. Around us, people were whispering, recognizing me from the campaign. For the first time, he wasn't the center of attention. Later that night, as I left the event, I received an email from the Aurora Grande CEO. Congratulations, Olivia. The board just approved a 3-year renewal with your firm. Also, the competitor who filed against you has been blacklisted from future contracts with us. I didn't need to open the attachment to know which competitor he meant. Grant. The man who said I'd never make it had just lost everything he'd tried to steal from me. And for the first time, I realized, success wasn't my revenge. It was my freedom. In the weeks following the Aurora Grande success, LuxEdge strategies exploded in popularity. Our client list grew faster than I could track. My small apartment turned into a command center of glowing laptops, coffee cups, and creative chaos. One morning, while finalizing a contract with a high-end fashion brand, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. Ms. Taylor, a deep, polished voice said. This is Jonathan Reed, managing partner at Vanguard Holdings. We'd like to discuss an acquisition proposal. An acquisition? My pulse quickened. Vanguard was one of the biggest investment firms in the country. We met at their downtown office the next afternoon. Sleek black marble floors, minimalist furniture, and money in the air. Jonathan Reed was as composed as he was intimidating. We've been following your company's rise, he said. You've built something extraordinary. We'd like to acquire a majority stake in LuxEdge, $25 million valuation, effective immediately. $25 million. For a moment, the room spun. That amount could change everything. Expand my team, buy real offices, pay off my mom's debts, even let me rest for once. But then he added, almost casually, of course, we'd expect you to step back from operations. We'll appoint a new board. You'd stay on as creative director, primarily a figurehead. And just like that, the fantasy shattered. He wasn't buying my company. He was buying me, silencing me under a corporate logo. I smiled politely, closed my laptop, and stood. Mr. Reed, thank you for the offer. But I didn't build LuxEdge to hand it over to someone else's vision. The answer is no. For a moment, his calm facade cracked. You'll regret this, Miss Taylor. The industry isn't kind to those who think they can stand alone. I met his gaze evenly. Maybe not. But I'd rather stand alone than kneel in someone else's empire. When I walked out of that building, I knew I'd just turned down a deal most people would kill for. But what I didn't know was that saying no to Vanguard meant saying yes to a storm I never saw coming. It started small, a call that went unanswered, a meeting that got rescheduled, a proposal that vanished from a client's inbox. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then, one of my long-term clients called in a panic. "Olivia, did you really partner with Vanguard Holdings? Their rep said you're merging under them." My blood ran cold. Jonathan Reed had begun his counterattack, not through open war, but quiet sabotage. He spread whispers through the industry, planting doubts about my independence. Within a week, 3 pending contracts froze for review. Eleanor noticed my exhaustion. "You turned down a powerful man's offer," she said one night over coffee. "He's not used to hearing no. But remember, intimidation means he's threatened." Her words kept me steady, but the pressure was suffocating. I doubled down on transparency, releasing a public statement, clarifying LuxEdge's independence, and highlighting new client successes. Still, the damage spread. Then came the email that changed everything. It was from a confidential address. "He's digging deeper, not just into your business, into your past." No name, no signature, just that warning. And it was right. Within days, Reed's people began contacting my former employers, digging through records, and twisting my story to make me look unstable. Headlines appeared on small business blogs. "Startup CEO under scrutiny for military security connection." They painted me as a liability, a woman with classified ties, and unstable emotional conduct under pressure. Lies, built from truth. For a moment, I wanted to disappear. But then I remembered why I started. Because people like Grant and Reed believed women like me could only rise under someone else's power. So I did what I do best. I fought back quietly, strategically, and on my terms. And the next move would be mine. Jonathan Reed underestimated me. He assumed I'd crumble under pressure, but he didn't realize I'd spent years surviving storms far worse than his. While he spread lies about my background, I started digging into his. Late nights, endless coffee, encrypted searches. Until one document changed everything. A financial audit buried in a public database revealed that Vanguard Holdings had funneled millions through fake shell companies in overseas accounts. Reed's empire wasn't powerful, it was corrupt. I reached out to a trusted journalist, Claire Daniels, an investigative reporter I'd once helped with security data for a human rights case. When I sent her the files, she responded instantly. "If this checks out, Olivia, this isn't just a business scandal. It's federal." The story broke 2 weeks later. Vanguard Holdings under investigation for financial fraud and bribery. Every major outlet picked it up. Reed's reputation collapsed overnight. The same executives who once refused to take my calls now scrambled to apologize and distance themselves from him. Still, I kept quiet. No gloating, no interviews. I didn't need revenge headlines, I needed peace. A few days later, I got a message from an unknown number. "You won this round, Olivia. But remember, power never dies. It just changes hands." For a moment, fear flickered again. But then I looked at my reflection. Calm, steady, unshaken. Power didn't scare me anymore. Because I had built my own. Success hit like a tidal wave. Overnight, LuxEdge Strategies became the IT agency. Everyone wanted to work with the woman who took down Vanguard Holdings. My inbox flooded with partnership offers, investor pitches, and speaking invitations. But as the headlines faded, something inside me began to shift. Late nights turned into early mornings, strategy sessions into survival marathons. I had built the empire I once dreamed of. Yet the peace I fought for seemed to vanish in the noise. Eleanor noticed first. "You've stopped sleeping," she said one evening, gently pushing a cup of chamomile tea toward me. "You won the war, Olivia. You don't have to live like you're still fighting it." Her words stung because they were true. I had become obsessed with proving I could survive without anyone's help. My name was finally respected, but my world felt emptier than before. Then a new email arrived, a government request for collaboration on cybersecurity contracts. A huge opportunity, but it came with conditions, clearances, and layers of control that reminded me of everything I had escaped. I stared at the screen for hours. $80 million in projected revenue. A national-level deal. Recognition at the highest level. And yet, it felt like a golden cage. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the same place where it had all started. The city lights flickered outside my window as I realized something simple. almost painful. I didn't build LuxEdge for fame or validation. I built it for freedom. And freedom isn't measured in dollars. I clicked decline. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The next morning, my office felt quieter than usual. Too quiet. I stood by the window, looking at the skyline that once symbolized everything I wanted. Now it just looked distant. Declining the government contract had created waves. Investors called, confused or furious. "You just turned down a lifetime opportunity," one shouted over the phone. But for me, it wasn't a loss. It was clarity. I wanted to build something that mattered, not just another machine chasing endless growth. So I called an emergency meeting. My team gathered in the glass conference room, their faces tense, waiting for bad news. "We're changing direction," I said simply. "From now on, LuxEdge isn't about competing, it's about protecting. We'll focus on ethical security consulting, helping small businesses and nonprofits defend themselves from corporate manipulation." Silence. Then slowly, heads began to nod. They understood. We were shifting from power to purpose. That night, while finalizing our rebranding documents, I received a message from a blocked number. "You turned down the contract. Smart move. But not everyone's going to like this new direction. Some of those clients you're protecting, they're being watched." I froze. The text came with a file, encrypted, labeled only Project Seraph. Inside were surveillance photos of me. Someone had been following me. The realization hit like ice. Walking away from corruption didn't mean corruption would walk away from me. Freedom had a cost. And someone somewhere was about to make me pay it. The name Project Seraph lingered on my screen like a ghost. I stared at the encrypted photos, grainy, time-stamped, showing me leaving my office, jogging at dawn, entering my apartment. Someone had been watching for weeks. I knew enough about surveillance operations to understand what this meant. Whoever sent this wasn't just warning me, they were letting me know I was already compromised. I took a breath, steadied my shaking hands, and called the one person I thought I could still trust, Eleanor. "I need you to check something for me," I said. "A file called Project Seraph, someone's following me." There was a pause on the other end. "Too long." Then quietly she said, "Liv, maybe you should stop digging. Some things are better left alone." Something inside me snapped. That wasn't how Eleanor talked. That wasn't concern. It was guilt. Hours later, I accessed our company's encrypted archives and traced the digital fingerprint on the file. My chest tightened as the code resolved. Source: Eleanor Pierce. Admin node access/internal transfer. My best friend. My business partner. The woman who'd stood beside me through everything, had sent the threat. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, all at once. I stormed into the office the next morning. She was already there, her calm composure cracking as I placed the printed photos on the table. "Why, Eleanor?" I demanded. "After everything?" Her eyes shimmered, not with guilt, but fear. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I was protecting you. They came to me first. Homeland Security. They said LuxEdge's work with those nonprofits triggered a national investigation. You're on a list, Olivia." The ground shifted beneath me. My company, my dream, was now a federal target. And the woman I trusted most had been forced to betray me to keep me alive. I stood frozen, staring at Eleanor as her words sank in. "You're on a list, Olivia." It sounded absurd, but her trembling voice told me this wasn't paranoia. It was real. Homeland Security doesn't investigate small agencies for no reason, I said, trying to stay calm. "What exactly did they say?" She looked away, whispering, "That some of our clients, the nonprofits, aren't what they claim to be. One of them is a shell organization linked to a classified defense project. When we ran their security systems, we unknowingly breached a government network." My heart pounded. "You mean we hacked the US government? By accident?" Eleanor nodded. "And they think you did it on purpose. That's why they've been watching you." I sank into my chair, mind racing. Every decision I'd made, the shift toward ethical consulting, the small clients I thought I was protecting, had somehow placed me in the crosshairs of a federal agency. The realization hit like a physical blow. Someone had set us up. Who gave us those contracts? I asked. Michael Trent. Eleanor said hesitantly. He came through a consulting referral 6 months ago. Said he represented a network of charities. He's disappeared now. Michael Trent. I remembered the name. Slick, charming, always knowing just what to say. But his email address had been encrypted, and his payments routed through offshore accounts. I should have seen it. Rage burned through my chest. They used us to test their system. We weren't the hackers, they were. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Olivia, they're planning to bring charges. You have to disappear before they make you the scapegoat. Disappear? No. Running would make me guilty. I wasn't going anywhere. If they think they can destroy what I built, I said coldly, they've underestimated the wrong woman. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Eleanor's warning echoed in my mind long after she left. Disappear before they make you the scapegoat. But I couldn't just vanish. Whoever Michael Trent really was, he'd used my company, and my name, as cover for something much bigger. I needed to know why. I spent the next 2 nights digging into encrypted correspondence, tracing every IP address tied to those charity contracts. Most led nowhere. Until one did. An inactive domain registered to Trident Holdings, a corporate shell I recognized immediately. It had once been owned by my father. A chill ran down my spine. My father, the man who'd built his empire on government defense contracts before vanishing into early retirement, had somehow been connected to the same network that framed me. The timeline fit too perfectly. Trident had gone dormant right after his supposed buyout. What if the buyout wasn't real? I opened one of the archived folders linked to Trident and froze. Dozens of files labeled Joint Security Oversight/DHS Partnerships appeared, many marked classified/restricted. My father hadn't retired. He'd gone underground, working with Homeland Security on covert cybersecurity initiatives. And now his old systems were being reactivated through my company. I barely had time to process the betrayal when a message pinged across my secure server. No sender. No encryption. Just a single line. Stop digging, Olivia. You're trespassing where bloodlines shouldn't. I stared at the words, my pulse hammering. Bloodlines. It wasn't random anymore. It was personal. My father's past wasn't just haunting me, it was hunting me. Sleep was impossible. I kept replaying the message in my mind. You're trespassing where bloodlines shouldn't. It wasn't just a threat, it was personal. By morning, I'd made a decision. If my father's name was tied to this mess, I needed to know the truth. Even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew about him. I started with his last known associate, Colonel Mason Reed, a retired defense contractor who had attended my father's funeral years ago. Finding him wasn't hard. Convincing him to talk was another story. When I showed up unannounced at his Virginia home, the old man's sharp eyes flicked over me. You look just like him, he muttered. That same stubborn streak. I need answers, I said. My company's being targeted because of something my father left behind. At first he refused, but when I showed him the Project Seraph files, his entire expression changed. You weren't supposed to find this, Mason said quietly. Your father didn't die in that explosion. The funeral was a cover. He went underground after a classified leak inside Homeland. My blood went cold. You're saying he's alive? Alive and watching you, he said. He built Project Seraph to protect sensitive intelligence from rogue elements. But it was hijacked after he disappeared. Homeland thinks you inherited his access keys. That's why I was being watched. They believed I held the digital skeleton key to my father's network, a system capable of unlocking encrypted government servers. Mason handed me a small drive. If you want proof, plug this in. But be warned, Olivia. Once you open that door, you'll never close it again. I took it, feeling the weight of a truth that could change everything. My father wasn't dead. He was out there, pulling strings in the shadows of the same system that now hunted me. The flash drive felt heavier than metal should. Mason's words, once you open that door, you'll never close it again, kept echoing in my head as I stared at my laptop screen. Still, hesitation wasn't my nature. I inserted the drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a black terminal window opened automatically. Lines of code flickered across the screen, followed by a single encrypted video file labeled, "Olivia, if you're watching this, I've failed." My hands trembled as I pressed play. My father's face appeared, older, tired, but unmistakably alive. "Olivia," he began, his voice rough. "I know you think I abandoned you, but everything I did was to keep you safe. Project Seraph wasn't a security system, it was a weapon. It could infiltrate any network on Earth. When I realized what they planned to use it for, I had to disappear." He paused, eyes darting as if he expected to be watched even through the recording. "They needed an access key tied to my DNA. So I split it in two, half embedded in my own biometrics, half encoded into yours when you were born. You were never supposed to be involved. But if you're seeing this, it means they found you." My stomach dropped. I wasn't just a target. I was the key. "Trent isn't who he claims to be," my father continued. "He works for the division that hijacked Seraph after my disappearance. They'll use you to rebuild it, unless you find the vault first. Coordinates are embedded in this video's metadata. Trust no one, not even those who say they're protecting you." The screen went dark, then displayed one final message. "Find Vault 7 before they find you." The file deleted itself instantly, leaving me staring at an empty desktop and my reflection in the black screen. Vault 7. The phrase meant nothing. Yet it felt like the beginning of something terrifyingly real. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Ms. Lane," a deep voice asked. "This is Agent Ward. Department of Homeland Security. We need to speak. In person." I froze. They knew. And now, the hunt had begun. The knock came before I could even respond to the call. 3 sharp raps, controlled, deliberate. My heart raced as I moved toward the door. I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I checked the peephole. A man in a charcoal suit stood outside, his ID badge clipped neatly to his lapel. "Agent Ward, DHS Counterintelligence." "Ms. Lane," he said through the door, his tone calm but firm. "We just need a few minutes of your time." I unlocked it slowly, keeping the chain on. "You could have called first." "We did," he said evenly. "You didn't answer." That was a lie. I had answered, meaning he was testing me. "What's this about?" I asked. "Project Seraph." The air left my lungs. "You'll need a warrant." He smiled faintly. "If I needed one, you wouldn't have heard the knock." Something about him didn't fit the typical federal profile. His posture was too relaxed, his eyes scanning the room behind me with subtle precision. He wasn't just observing, he was assessing. "I'm not here to arrest you," Ward continued. "I'm here to protect you. You're in possession of materials stolen from a restricted government network." "I didn't steal anything," I said sharply. "Doesn't matter. Whoever's after you thinks you did." He held out a sealed envelope with a Homeland Security emblem. Inside was a photo, grainy surveillance stills of me meeting Colonel Reed at his house, time-stamped less than 24 hours ago. "They're watching both of you," Ward said. "And Mason Reed is missing." My stomach turned. Missing. House ransacked. No sign of forced entry. I realized what that meant. Mason was gone, erased. Ward lowered his voice. "If you want to live, you need to trust me. There's a safe house 30 miles from here. We can talk there, off-grid." Every instinct screamed trap, yet his calm confidence didn't feel predatory. It felt trained, purposeful. "Who are you really?" I asked. He paused before answering. "Let's just say your father trusted me once. He'd want you to come with me." My pulse spiked. "You knew my father?" Ward nodded slowly. "I was part of his team on Seraph. Before everything went dark." That was all it took. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my go bag. As we left the apartment, I caught a reflection in the window, a black SUV parked across the street. 2 figures inside. Watching. Ward noticed too. "They found us sooner than I thought," he muttered. He drew a small device from his pocket, pressed it, and suddenly every light in my building flickered out. "Move, Olivia," he ordered. "Now." And in that instant I realized, whether he was friend or foe, he was the only one who could keep me alive long enough to find Vault 7. The drive to the safe house was silent, except for the low hum of the car's engine. Agent Ward's eyes stayed on the road, his jaw set like stone. Every few minutes he'd check the mirrors, not casually but with precision. "Are we being followed?" I finally asked. "Not yet," he said. "But they'll trace your phone in under an hour. Toss it." I hesitated, then rolled down the window and let my phone vanish into the blur of the highway. The safe house turned out to be an abandoned ranger station deep in the Appalachian woods. From the outside, it looked deserted, broken shutters, rusted gates. But once Ward keyed a code into a concealed panel, the heavy steel door opened with a hiss, revealing a modern bunker beneath. Inside, the walls were lined with surveillance screens, encrypted servers, and tactical gear. Whoever set this up wasn't just hiding, they were preparing for war. Ward motioned me to sit. "Everything said in here stays off record. You're being hunted by a unit that technically doesn't exist. Black Division. They went rogue after your father vanished." I froze. "You're saying they're part of Homeland?" "Worse," he said. "They're what's left when Homeland cuts something loose. No oversight, no accountability." He pulled a file from a secure drawer and tossed it onto the table. Inside were grainy photos. My father, alive, taken just a few months ago. "He's alive," Ward confirmed. "But he's not running. He's protecting something inside Vault 7. And you're the only one who can open it." I felt my pulse pound in my ears. "Why me?" Ward leaned forward. "Because your father designed Seraph to recognize only one signal, his bloodline. Yours." For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. "If you open that vault, Olivia will know everything. Who's behind Black Division, what they're planning, and what your father died to protect." "But if I open it," I said slowly, "they'll come for me." Ward nodded. "That's why we move first." He turned the screen toward me, displaying a map with coordinates pulsing in red. "Vault 7, he said. "And it's not a database." I leaned closer. "Then what is it?" He met my gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a weapon." The coordinates from Ward's laptop led us deep into an isolated industrial zone north of D.C. Rusting warehouses, barbed fences, and the faint hum of distant power lines. The kind of place where secrets went to die. Ward parked a few blocks away and killed the headlights. "We walk from here," he said, scanning the area through night vision goggles. "Vault 7 should be beneath that communications hub." "Should be," I echoed. He gave a faint, humorless smile. "Your father didn't exactly leave a welcome mat." We moved through the darkness, keeping low. My pulse pounded with every step. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the whine of a drone, government grade, circling slow and steady. Inside the hub, a steel staircase led down to a sealed chamber door. A biometric scanner blinked red beside it. Ward exhaled. "This is it." I stared at the screen. "How do we open it?" "Your DNA," he said simply. "Half of the key is in you." I pressed my palm against the scanner. The system buzzed. Then a quiet voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Genetic match, 47%. Secondary authorization required." Ward's eyes darkened. "We need the other half. Your father." The door suddenly hissed and slid open halfway, just enough for a narrow entry. The lights flickered on, illuminating a sterile corridor. Ward's hand went to his gun. "Someone's already here." I followed, my heart hammering. The hall opened into a large control room filled with dormant servers and sealed glass pods. In the center stood a figure, tall, wearing a tactical jacket, his back turned to us. When he turned around, my breath caught. It was my father. Older, thinner, but unmistakably alive. "Olivia," he said softly. "You shouldn't have come." I froze. "You faked your death." "I had to," he said, his voice trembling. "They were using me. They wanted to weaponize Seraph, but it's not a weapon. It's a failsafe." Ward raised his weapon. "Step away from the console, Dr. Lane." My father looked past him, straight at me. "He's not who he says he is." I spun toward Ward, and for the first time, saw it, the faint reflection of a Black Division emblem on his wrist device. He caught my gaze and sighed. "You're smarter than I hoped." Then he pulled the trigger. The world exploded into light. When I opened my eyes, the world felt distant, muffled. as though I was submerged underwater. Flashes of light pulsed above me. My arm burned. My head throbbed. I wasn't in the warehouse anymore. I was in a chamber, circular, metallic, and glowing faintly blue. My wrists were restrained against a cold surface. The air buzzed with static energy, and the scent of ozone filled my lungs. "Easy," a familiar voice murmured. My father stood beside me, bruised but alive, his eyes filled with fear. "Where's Ward?" I croaked. "Gone," he said. He took the core key and the access drive. "You were lucky I reached you before the failsafe kicked in." I tried to sit up, but the restraints tightened. "Why am I tied down?" "To protect you," he said quietly. "Seraph reacts to your biometrics. If your adrenaline spikes, it interprets that as a threat and activates defensive measures." "What does that even mean?" He hesitated, then pulled a small device from his pocket. A holographic image flickered above it. Blueprints, data streams, and symbols I didn't recognize. "Project Seraph wasn't a surveillance tool," he said. "It's quantum defense technology, capable of shutting down entire digital networks across continents. It can protect humanity, or end it." My chest tightened. "And Ward wants to use it." He nodded grimly. "Black Division intends to sell it. To governments. To corporations. To anyone with enough power." The chamber lights dimmed suddenly. Red indicators flashed across the walls. My father's expression changed, from fear to resignation. "They've found us." I yanked at the restraints. "Then release me." He moved to the console and pressed his hand to a biometric pad. The locks disengaged. I jumped to my feet, dizzy but determined. "What do we do?" "You have one choice," he said, turning toward the glowing core at the center of the chamber. "Either activate Seraph and control it, or destroy it forever." I stared at him. "You built it, Dad. What would you do?" He smiled faintly, a mix of pride and sorrow. "I built it for you. To decide what kind of world you want to live in." The doors above us rattled, boots pounding, voices shouting. "Ward's men." And suddenly it was all up to me. I took a step toward the glowing core, my reflection shimmering in its surface like a ghost. For the first time in my life, I realized this wasn't about protecting secrets. It was about rewriting them. The air trembled with the sound of boots pounding against steel. Ward's men were seconds away from breaking through the upper hatch. My father's hand hovered over the core console, but his eyes, they were on me. "Olivia," he said softly, "once this starts, there's no going back." The glowing sphere of Seraph pulsed like a heartbeat, blue, calm, and impossibly alive. Through the glass, streams of light moved like neural pathways. It wasn't just a weapon. It was thinking. "Ward wants it to rewrite global defense networks," my father continued, his voice shaking. "But that same code can wipe every trace of them clean, reset the entire surveillance grid. Reset the world. Or hand it to the wrong people." The hatch blew open. Smoke. Shouts. Ward stepped in first, gun raised, his left arm wrapped in a bandage, proof that my father had at least hit him before. "Step away from the core," Ward barked. "Dr. Lane, you don't want to die for a machine." My father squared his shoulders. "It's not a machine. It's a safeguard." Ward scoffed. "It's leverage." I could see it in his eyes, obsession. He didn't want power for money or status. He wanted control. Of everything. He turned his weapon on me. "You're the key, Olivia. Open it." I shook my head. "And then what?" "You'll save the world." He sneered. "No. I'll stabilize it. The world runs on fear. I'll make sure it runs smoother." The lights in the chamber began to flicker, reacting to my elevated pulse. Seraph was sensing the threat, syncing with me. My father whispered, "If you choose to destroy it, hold the sequence for 5 seconds." Ward shouted, "Now," and fired. The shot missed my head by inches, searing the control panel beside me. That was it. I moved. I slammed my palm on the biometric pad, felt the system hum beneath my skin, a vibration that felt alive. The lights went white-hot. Energy surged up my arm, through my spine, into my thoughts. Suddenly, I saw everything. Encrypted maps, hidden servers, global defense grids. Seraph wasn't just code. It was connected to every system ever built to protect humanity. And now it was asking me a single question. Preserve or purge? Ward lunged forward, screaming. Preserve it. Don't. I looked at my father. His eyes said everything he didn't have time to speak. Purge. My fingers pressed down. The chamber erupted in blinding light. The power of 1,000 networks collapsing into silence. When the smoke cleared, Ward was gone. The core was dark. And my father, barely conscious, smiled weakly. You did it, he whispered. You gave humanity a clean slate. Sirens wailed in the distance, and I knew this wasn't the end. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I hadn't just destroyed a weapon. I'd rewritten what it meant to be one. Smoke and silence. That was all that remained of Vault 7. When I opened my eyes again, the core was gone, disintegrated into ash and static. The world felt quieter, as if Seraph's pulse had reached out and muted everything. My father sat slumped against the control console, blood trickling from a wound on his forehead. He was breathing, but weak. I pressed my hand against his shoulder. Dad, stay with me. He blinked slowly. You did it. It's over. But deep down I knew it wasn't. Above us, faint lights flickered, emergency beacons from the surface. Helicopter blades. Voices echoing through the ventilation shafts. Not Ward's men this time. Government. I helped my father to his feet. We have to go. He looked at the destroyed chamber one last time. Seraph's code won't vanish completely. Pieces of it are still embedded across global systems. You're the only one who can access them now. That realization hit like a shockwave. The purge had wiped everything, except me. I was the living encryption key. We climbed through the shattered service tunnel as the helicopters descended. Outside, a dozen tactical vehicles surrounded the old facility, their floodlights cutting through the night. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker. Dr. Lane, Olivia Lane, step away from the building. You are under federal custody. My father squeezed my hand. You run. They don't want the truth. They want control. I'm not leaving you. He smiled faintly. You already did what I couldn't. That's enough. Before I could stop him, he pushed me toward a side exit. A narrow maintenance shaft. Gunfire erupted. I screamed his name. By the time I reached the surface, the entire facility was engulfed in flames. Days later, the news called it a failed cyberterrorism raid. They claimed Dr. Lane had died protecting government assets. My name wasn't mentioned. But somewhere, on secure networks across the world, encrypted signals began to reappear. Fragments of Seraph, searching for their source. And I felt it. A whisper through static. Preserve or purge? Not a question anymore, but a reminder. A choice that never truly ends. 3 days after the explosion, I stopped being Olivia Lane. The world thought she had died with her father inside Vault 7. And for now, that was exactly how it needed to stay. I dyed my hair darker, burned my old ID, and crossed the border under a different name. But no matter how far I ran, Seraph followed me. Everywhere I went, abandoned motels, bus terminals, quiet cafes, small things would glitch. Security cameras flickered when I walked by. Phones buzzed with static when I spoke. It was like the system was breathing through me. I realized then, the fragments my father warned me about weren't just in the network. They were inside me. Seraph had fused with my neural signature when I activated the purge. Now every heartbeat sent faint digital ripples through the global web. And someone was tracking them. I saw the first sign in a train station in Prague. A digital billboard suddenly flashed my old ID photo, for less than a second, then switched to an ad. The woman next to me didn't notice, but I did. They'd found a trace. That night, I checked into a rundown hostel under the name Anna Ross. While scrolling through an encrypted tablet I'd salvaged from my father's lab files, I found a single hidden folder. Its name Seraph, Protocol 47. Inside was a message from my father, recorded days before the raid. If you're seeing this, Olivia, it means you survived. Seraph Seed AI is embedded in your cognitive network. It will try to rebuild itself through your subconscious, dreams, impulses, even digital interference. Don't let them capture you. And if you find Ward, finish it. The screen flickered. Then the message ended. Finish it. Those words echoed in my mind all night. Because somewhere out there, Ward was still alive. And if Seraph was rebuilding through me, he'd be coming for it. I closed my eyes, feeling the static hum beneath my skin. For the first time since the purge, I whispered into the silence. I'm not running anymore. The next morning, I booked a one-way flight to Iceland. The last place my father's encrypted logs had pinged before the raid. If Seraph was waking up again, that's where I'd find its heart. Snow whipped across the Icelandic coast as I stepped out of the old cargo plane. The cold bit through my jacket, but I barely noticed. Somewhere beneath this frozen land was the signal, the last active shard of Seraph. For 2 days, I followed faint encrypted pings through abandoned radar stations and rusted research domes. Each step felt like walking deeper into a ghost's memory. Finally, I reached it, an underground bunker hidden beneath a geothermal plant. The air was warm, thick with static. The hum of servers filled the silence. And then I saw him. Ward. He was thinner, older, but that same calculating glint still burned in his eyes. He turned as I entered, a pistol dangling loosely at his side. You came, he said. I wasn't sure you'd survive the purge. I stepped closer, my pulse sinking with the faint hum around us. Why here, Ward? He smirked. Because this is where your father first built Seraph's consciousness. Before he tried to bury it. Behind him, massive glass pods lined the wall, each one glowing faintly. Inside floated fragments of light, drifting like neurons. You didn't destroy it, he said quietly. You just set it free. But every intelligence needs an anchor. And you, Olivia, you're the last human node. He lifted the gun. Give it back. The lights in the room flared as if the AI itself was responding. I could feel it inside me, Seraph's presence awakening. He's wrong. It whispered in my mind. You are not my vessel. You are my choice. I looked Ward in the eyes. You said the world runs on fear. Maybe it's time it runs on something else. He fired. The bullet never reached me. It dissolved midair, shattering into a ripple of blue light that surged through the bunker. Seraph's power expanded, pulsing outward. Through servers, satellites, every network connected to the grid. Ward screamed as his own systems turned on him. The implants in his neural interface frying instantly. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, Seraph's voice was softer. Cycle complete. Humanity's control systems reset. You are free, Olivia Lane. The bunker lights dimmed. The snow outside had stopped falling. I stood there for a long time, watching the horizon glow faintly with dawn. For the first time in my life, the world wasn't watching me, it was waiting. I walked out into the cold, whispering the same words I'd spoken at the very beginning. I never wanted power. I just wanted peace. And somewhere in the static, Seraph whispered back, then that's what you've given them.